And I'm so happy people are leaving because, those moments when you leave right before the thing happens. And then you go, where was I when it just happened? You left in the wrong time. I tell you, I'm older than you. I know, I've been there. Then you go read the listening history and you go, wow, I almost was there. I left 5 minutes early. Well, too bad for you. Come on in, you coming in? Hesitation is no place. We're in overtime. Come on. This is financial, this is money time. Okay, let's get serious. The following event is actually, believe it or not, could be a single most important event coming out of the global innovation hubs and the whole new structure, especially during this financial day. Why? Because we managed to now introduce to you, for the first time ever, what will hopefully become the world's most important COP event, in which, listen to this, that the real deal of financial institutions who are not only talk, or not necessarily walk, but actually walk the talk, walk their talk, will get awarded. And we came with this model, which we're going to show you in a minute, that will introduce for the first time, alive, a word that our vision, I'll introduce myself at the end, that's the last important thing. The event that will go on, in which every year, in this event, we will award 3 categories. But before I let you, Roland Schatz, introduce this model and invite him to introduce the model, I will ask a few dignitaries here. I asked Rene Crescente, please go. Thomas, I'm sorry, I've been Thomas as well. And Moshe, please come to the front. And Summer, surprise, come to the front. Summer, here, come on. No, it's okay. This is not everything needs to be organized in city of free to. Those guys don't even know what I want from them. They're so important, but here's what I want from them. I'm Tal Ronen, I'm the co-founder of YKCenter with our friends and SDSN and some of the institutions you saw outside. We actually managed to create a cocktail awards. That's the good news. The bad news, the cocktails are not coming. They've been ordered emergency for next Friday, to be here at 6 o'clock, but unfortunately, it's not gonna happen. So we're not gonna give you drinks, so deal with it now, because I'm hungry as well. And we're not gonna feed you because the food and the drinks are not coming. Now, that's the bad news. The good news, it's a prelude for a couple of years down the road in which no drinks and no food will be available for planet Earth. So we better get adjusted to being skinny, being fast, and being very, very flexible. The purpose of this event is to bring up a model in which this delegation here will be asked to respond and feed forward to what is now going to be introduced to you. Roland Schatz himself, who's been working on that for years, is actually the only person that I met throughout the last many years that actually worked as we did on the Sustainable Development Goals. So he really understands what it is. He was working closely with 3 of the German councillors, and he's very much in the game of SDGs. And he will share with us a model that will bring about a new conversation. I called it walk the talk conversation. when the rubber meets the road. Those who say and do. Roland, please come and introduce yourself. This word.
So for those who were here 2 days ago, you remember that I promised that I give you the background why Masamba and Carlos are based in Bonn and not in Vienna or Geneva. Can you remember why they are in Bonn? Because of Beethoven, exactly. So you are waiting 2 days to find out what the real thing is about. So for those who believe that Beethoven is only about entertainment, raise your arm. For those who believe that Beethoven is, yes, about entertainment, but about setting standards, raise your arm. Aha. And you know why Beethoven was able to do that? Because he learned from his big hero, whose name was Johann Sebastian Bach. Who of you know Johann Sebastian Bach? Fantastico. So, tell me, how did Johann Sebastian Bach sign every piece he composed? The Messe in H-Moll, the Brandenburg Concert, everything what he signed, what he composed, how did he sign it? For those who are wearing these things, I think you should leave the room. You no longer qualify. He signed everything what he composed from 1685 when he was born. By then he was not really composing too many pieces, but till 1750 when he died blind. So he composed the Art of the Fugue without seeing. He composed the Messe in H-Moll without seeing. But he signed everything he composed with what? SDG. Aha. He didn't care about Sustainable Development Goals because Sustainable Development Goals are actually smaller than his version of SDG. So his version of SDG is and was Sole Deo Gloria. Only to the honor of God. And now we zoom forward around 50 years. Beethoven was born. And the reason why Masamba and Carlos and all the other friends from UNFCCC are rightly placed in Bonn and not in Vienna, where Beethoven lived more years than he was living in Bonn, is why? Because of innovation. Innovation is the beginning. When you are the Grand Ludwig, it's less about innovation, although he's probably one of the only ones who were innovative till the day he died. So today's version of Beethoven is how he sets standards. So if Ludwig would be in this room, I can tell you he would no longer be in the room. He would have left already Sunday evening when he saw how this place is organized. When he realized that the way how we have to scream at each other because the acoustic is so shitty that it is extremely nerve-wracking to sit in this place, try to follow what we are trying to present to you, that you are at the end of the nerves even before I get started. So Beethoven would have left. Let me give you the anecdote to it so you know that I'm not just talking nonsense. Beethoven was at the little age of 16, and back then music was organized like pop. The musicians were on stage, but the rich guys, the counts, and those who were in the room were simply talking. They couldn't care less that the musicians were on stage. And they kept talking because they thought that when Beethoven and others are on stage, it's literally like going to a shopping mall where you have background music. But you continue with your shopping, you talk with your wife, but there's something music in behind. Well, that's okay maybe for a shopping mall. But Beethoven felt, what am I doing here? I'm presenting to the most relevant people gathered in this room what I think is the solution for them. I spent days and days and days composing this, and they are not listening. What is this? So little Beethoven, 16 years old, smashed the piano, which was back then not a piano, only a cembalo. He stood up, and you know what he said? I'm not playing in front of these pigs, and left. 16-year-old. But he knew that if we want to get things done together, we need to not only be able to listen to each other, we need to want listening to each other. So that will be his first comment, and that is why you don't see him in the room. He left already 5 days ago. The second anecdote, which is even more important for what we want to achieve, you might recall the session we had beforehand with the stock exchanges and earlier on with the finance experts who are telling us 1,000 reasons why they can't be invested in the SDGs. They cannot even be invested in the ESG, which I think is last century. This century is SDG. And they are telling us, we want to make money, and that's the reason why we can't be invested in climate, we can't be invested in agriculture, we can't be invested in all of this because the cash is not right. When I started this journey, it feels like 100 years ago, but it was in the 90s, and I was presenting a book, not written by me, but by the CEO of PricewaterhouseCoopers. Sam DiPiazza wrote with Bob Eccles the book, The Value Reporting Revolution. And he published it in the 90s. And he told the world, after all the research PricewaterhouseCoopers was doing with this Harvard Business School professor, that there are basically 5 elements which are true across all continents, helping investors to decide, I want to be invested in company A and not in company B. And guess what these 5 principles were? Masamba sits there and he stands for one. They are looking for the companies, how innovative they are, what is their R&D pipeline. If they don't have a strong R&D pipeline, they don't want to be invested in this company. This was published already in the 90s.
Here we present to you the first module of One and Self-Analyzer.
Now you know why Beethoven is not here, right? Okay, so the guys with whom I had to work in the 90s, the heads of Allianz, the heads of Goldman Sachs, the heads of Deutsche Bank, the heads of Dresdner Bank, they always told me, Roland, when you come with these additional... When you come with this additional stuff like Sam DiPiazza, that doesn't work for us, because every additional criteria you put on our desk costs basis points. And everything what costs basis points, that's not good for our business. Back then, I still had hair, and I was trying to trust them and believe them, so I didn't get really moving. But then we entered the new millennium, and the chairman of the German Stock Exchange, Dr. Joachim Faber, came to us and said, we need principles. Beforehand, he used to be the CEO of Allianz Global Investor, and he bought PIMCO. To convince Bill Gross, the big guru of investment in America, that he should add sustainability into the equation if he does investment. And Joachim failed. He couldn't convince him, although Joachim bought Bill, not Bill bought Joachim. So Joachim was then chairman of the German Stock Exchange. He said, we need principles, we need clear criteria. So we got the president of NASDAQ together, we got the leaders from AXA, a whole bunch of guys who really know their stuff, and tried to create criteria which could help understand how one can be in this investment business and doing both. Earn a good money, but at the same time be meaningful and help the people being invested in stocks which make their heart beat. And that is what we are here together. Since 5 years, our team is doing something what nobody does in the world. If you speak to the finance geeks and you ask them, did you ever read the 1,300 pages of the annual report just filed from Citibank to the SEC? We just had Mary here sitting. Did anybody of you read this annual report where the company explains how they spent their money last year and what they are going to do? We can come to a very fast agreement. Everybody says nobody reads the annual reports. We spend most of our time on the financials, but the non-financial part, who cares? Nobody reads it. Well, that was my little moment, because I learned in accounting 1984, when I was sitting my first semester of studying economics, that the professor teaching accounting, he told us, listen to that, 1984, he said, if an annual report is done good, it captures 50 to 60%. Can somebody take her mic? If an annual report is done good, it captures 50 to 60% of the value of a company. If an annual report is done extremely well, it captures 70% of the company. And then he smiled and he said, but you can bet most of the annual reports are neither done very well or okayish, they are below that. And little Roland was sitting in that lecture and thought, what the heck am I doing here? I spent all my youth playing piano and trying to be really good, not missing one note, and now I'm here studying economics and the professor is telling me that I can leave my left hand in the trousers when I play the Moonlight Sonata. One hand is enough, 50%. The only sad notice I'm doing today is nothing has changed. The accounting rules and the accounting standards are more or less as they were in 1984. This is a scandal, but we will not talk about that. We will talk about the non-financial time, not the number section. And when Citibank writes their 1,300 pages and they expect nobody's reading that, when others are publishing their 200 pages or 50 pages or 500 pages, we stood up and said, let's read that. And not only let's read that, let's analyze that according to the 17 SDGs and the 169 targets, and try to understand what makes these guys tick. Because what they write should be, explaining to us what they have done and what they are going to do. If this works, to give you an idea what my team has done. So we read all 769,586 sentences published from 2017 till 2022, how Toyota, how Deutsche Bank, how Shell explained to the shareholders in their legal binding document what they had done last year and what they are going to do. There's no software existing to provide this type of data. So we need human beings, trained human beings, to provide this rich database. And as we know that companies sometimes overdo it and are proud of themselves and we don't know what they are really doing, our analysts can only categorize if this sentence is any use by understanding what they are doing in regards to SDG 1, 2, 3 or 17, if they give a concrete example which one can then click on or read and understand what they are actually doing when they talk about education. If they just do what Trump is doing each time when he got caught by dealing with women in a way one should not deal with, he would do a press conference a day later saying, "I like women." A sentence in an annual report of a company where they say, "We do education," doesn't qualify to get a mark in the SCR 500. So this is one database. The other database is all 2,479,451 reports published in Wall Street Journal, FT, in the other media about the very same companies. Trying to find out, is that what the company is saying, does that resonate with what the journalists think about what the company is actually doing? And in order to even have one additional quality insurance, we read at the same time all 1,329,680 quotes from financial analysts who are accompanying these companies on a daily basis, trying to find out what is BP doing in comparison to the other ones in that industry. So if you look at that universe, first of all, it's very work intense, as you can imagine. It's not done by software, it's done by human beings who are reading this and categorizing along the SDGs. But at the same time, when you do this, you can then come up with results which I want to share with you only for the banking sector, that all of a sudden you can start, pick and choose, in case you want to invest your own money, your pension fund's money, and you want to pick which are the banks in this category of banking who are most dedicated and most explicit about their commitment to SDG 1, no poverty. You might be interested in health, and you can pick your stock. You can be interested in education, etc., etc. And if you do this in this precise way, all of a sudden you are matching both. You get to understand what the company is doing, but at the same time what they try to do related not only to the 17 SDGs, but at the same time to the 169 targets. And this wealth of data we gave to the president of NASDAQ and to Joe Casugal, who used to manage the 68 billion of the UN pension fund. And they turned this into a fund of its own. And guess what the result since 5 years is, the cumulative result? That's more than 30% per annum. This morning we remember Jeff Sachs said, well, if you can give us a little bit more than 4%, I'm in. The SDGs can do better. If you combine investment with the normal thing, what Thomas will talk about later, but plus checking how are they in regards to purpose, how are they doing in regards to being committed to one or more of the SDGs. So the idea is, this was a concept, or this is a concept, that we are asking you all for feedback, because as of next year, we would like to turn this into a real award. We want to go and say thank you to those banks who are doing like this. If you look at that, the overall winner over 5 years would be, without your feedback, Banco Bradesco, number 2, BNP Paribas, and number 3, Banorte, in the category banking. In the category insurances, the winner would be very clearly AXA, followed by Zurich, and then Aviva. And in regards to stock exchanges, as in our universe of the 500 stocks we are analyzing, we only have 10. The winner would have been B3, Japan, and then Deutsche Börse, German Stock Exchange, Frankfurt. So this was just our prelude to Tal and all the others saying, well, what can we do by combining climate, because you can see here as well the one is most dedicated to SDG 13. How can we focus on climate, the overall purpose of the SDGs, and showing that the finance sector is up to the game, that they themselves are following not only the talk, but they try to be committed. What we now need is that the very same entities are willing to get invested themselves. They get a lot of money from the ECB on a regular basis at negative interest, so they can make money under the promise that they would then increase the amount of lending to companies, which we don't see that much. But here is at least the first approach where we can say the finance sector is not doing bad. They are committed, and let's get going and try to find ways how we can cooperate and how we can work together in order to find the real SDG champions in the field of banking, insurance, and stock exchanges. Thank you very much.
Crowdsourcing. This is a crowdsourcing. So when we had this idea, Thomas, I actually like now to introduce this distinguished Rene Crosanti, and I'll let you guys just speak in a moment. Thomas, Moshe, and Summer, I'm sorry, I keep saying names, it's a long day. Summer, thank you. From your perspective, professional perspective, this price has been introduced forward. What's your takeaway? What's your feed forward? What do you think of? What shouldn't? What do you see the impact of measuring those who walk the talk in the financial field alongside with such metrics?
Thank you very much. First of all, I was impressed by your methodology of going through reports and analyzing by SDG, specific SDG, and so on. Well, we are in a world where investors or participants or market participants are going beyond pure financial considerations. And it's also, as I said this morning, a question of generations, where particularly young generation of investors are looking at what they can get, but also to make good through their investment. So it's important to provide a kind of rating or a kind of reward to such banks. The question I have is, this will require some explaining of the methodology, because she agrees of the methodology in order to respond to that and to accept or to validate these ratings. You said what's interesting is that we are moving also in a world where there is beyond the measuring of the pure accounting factors. There are institutions, and I'm thinking of the ISSB, the Institute for Sustainable Board, Standard Board, which provide also elements of, elements of performance of institutions in relation with SDG, in relation to that. So we are in the middle of a change, of a revolution, where the traditional accounting standards, which were introduced, by the way, after the 29 crisis, where the stock exchanges wanted to have standard measures of the profitability and the balance sheets of these institutions. We are now at a period where we need to introduce something similar, additional, which will measure extra financial performance. So this could be an element of measure, but we will have to explain and to give ownership to these participants or the observers of your methodology. Thank you.
Okay, I try to compete with the party next door. I can just agree with you and thank you so much for being here today, and particularly to Roland for his excellent work. I want to give a small story of a very dear friend of mine, Peter Bloom, who started, I think, 25 years ago, Triodos Bank in the Netherlands. It's not a listed company, so that's why it's not in your papers. And Peter started the first sustainability bank. And what was really fascinating, and we all remember the Lehman crisis, where all the banks crashed and had very much difficulties. Triodos Bank was growing 5 times in 1 year because everybody was shifting their money to Triodos. Because Triodos was not speculating, Triodos was investing the money in sustainable projects. Yeah, and today it's the world's largest sustainability bank. Yeah, and I think it is a good example that there's no conflict between profitability and sustainability. Yeah, this we always have to consider. The other great moment I actually had this morning when I was with Masamba at the African Union, and I heard an African saying and I really loved it. It said, if you want to walk fast, better walk alone. But if you have to walk far, you better walk together. Yeah? And I really like this saying from the Commissioner for Digitalization, actually from the African Union. It's a very old African saying, but the core is, if we want to be sustainable and successful, we have to do it together. We have to do it together with the financial sector, we have to do it together with academia and research and innovation, and we have to do it together with the private sector. When we started our project in Namibia, and I still remember this together with Professor Lombula from the Steinmetz University and Eduard, my partner in DGNI, we said, it is not the issue to develop a project in Africa to produce hydrogen. The key issue is where do we find the technology and the equipment. I mean, in today's world, you hear every day another 50 gigawatt announcement what they want to produce on green hydrogen. But have you looked at the capacity of electrolyzer which can be produced today? It's less than 15 gigawatts. Yeah? So the relationship between equipment and plants announced for green hydrogen are just outrageous. So that was the reason why we started about 2.5 years ago. How can we build electrolyzer for Africa? How can we get enough solar panels for Africa so we can build large-scale green hydrogen productions in Africa and really utilize this transition for the build-up of industrialization, of sustainable industrialization in Africa. And fortunately, we did not have to walk fast alone. We walked together as a team of 22 European companies who decided to go with us and to develop this project in Namibia. And we are now happy to say that next year, first quarter, we will have groundbreaking and we will build the biggest electrolyzer plant worldwide in Africa. We will produce electrolyzers in Africa to produce green hydrogen on the continent. Yeah? And I think we are on the one hand side very proud that we have achieved this goal and developed it. We found a fantastic partner, but it should also be an inspiration for others, not to think short-sighted, to think about how can we create value in developing countries and how can we find financial institutions supporting us, bringing impact to this developing world. Then we are not talking about any more loss and damage payments. We are talking about real investment, bringing real growth and sustainable growth to the developing world in a very sustainable way. Thank you.
Thank you, Tal, for this inspiring pitch.
This is a test. It is only a test.
I told you that. Thank you for the exercise. I have 3 quick comments and one a bottom line statement. First comment is Warren Buffett is known for saying that the stock exchange is not a weighing machine, it's a sentiment machine. Question is, do we want to make it a values machine? Not values machine. And how we trade off certain values against others. Second of all, Bob Kaplan is known for his methodology of activity-based costing, which was revolutionary and really made a good job. Then he developed the balanced scorecard. Balanced scorecard is basically on business measures, measuring service, measuring profitability, and so on. And that failed miserably, although it was easier to communicate to employees how to follow up on those goals. The problem was that the trade-offs between the different scorecards, between the different scores, was not there. Nobody gave you the trade-off, and there was not a specific metric that you would follow as an overall metric like ROE or something like that. Third comment is that we don't want to make the governments get away with the responsibility that easily and convey that really the ones that are responsible and the ones that need to do the job are the companies, corporations, and the private sector. The responsibility is with government. But I said there is a bottom line statement. I think this is highly praised. I mean, giving some kind of beacon to institutional investors, other investors, and giving praises to those who promote SDGs, which are, as opposed to ESGs, we are talking about universal values that all of us as a universe value. And also, we're talking about measurements of those SDGs rather than some kind of abstract notion of ESG. So I think this is to be praised. Thank you. No food, I got it. No drink, I got it. But this is unfair competition. So I make it very short. I mean, it's always helpful to see a well thought out methodology that has a very well easy to understand benchmark that will help across the board to finance different types of projects that for now is very hard to finance. But I just want to add something that Moshe said, that SDG doesn't come on the expense of profits. And it should not be thought as such. It can be actually a source of profits. And we shouldn't be shy to say that. You know, there is nothing wrong for a company for a profit, unlike a company for non-profit. Upfront is made to do that. To say we want to do SDG and we want to make profits. And there's tons of projects that can be launched on this methodology in the Middle East. And I applaud the idea.
Thank you so much. I think now I understand why I'm in this. A very old friend of mine, unfortunately she died. She was the woman that brought consciousness to business. Her name is Barbara Marx Hubbard. She used to call me the head of the department that it can't be done. This event is actually a demonstration of human beings coming up to test. None of the circumstances around were planned. You know, we were planning a whole new event, a different event, different circumstances. And I wanted with Roland to demonstrate how we can, how we can bounce back without knowing. And what I do is what I actually want to invite you to do. You reach out to the most trustable friends you have and you ask them, step in. Those four gentlemen, distinguished guests, each with a story, a financial background is immense, were part of the iteration, the how do you call it, improvisation when you realize that the plans you had is not what's happening. So I'd ask Rene, and I asked Thomas, and I asked Shed, and I asked you, Summer, to bring us the listening of what Roland's been working on and playing for this moment for 5 years. I did not want, and we are not going to finish without complete recognition, appreciation, admiration. Where's Masamba? And for not, see, we can talk about innovation and technologies all the time, but what about the moment when, everything breaks down and you need to improvise and you need to invent? That's what counts. That's what counts. Now, this model, which is highly invested in, and what you gave us a chance to bring it forward, just got backed up, but it's 4 distinguished people who said to Roland, to us, Masamba, how we can take it and move it forward coming next year in this. Because what I've heard you guys echoing is actually telling Roland, who's been fighting for the SDGs when he was, since they were, he actually wrote the thing with Ban Ki-moon, didn't you know that? You were there. He's to blame. He's to blame about this, or to be acknowledged, of course. And today, what we are now attempting, and I'm not going to fight the circumstances, you need to leave at the back, at the top. This model is to be continued. Would you like me to announce the winners of what we discovered up to that part? Is it allowed to be, we have it up here? So this, we kept it a secret. You're mostly welcome if you want to shift, because now Roland is actually telling us, but you're gonna go to the final, we're gonna see the final list again of the top. Now, Roland, this is the beginning, so what we want to do is those who won will be notified that they are leading, are to be the first pack to generate with us for the next COP in Abu Dhabi, right? That's your vision. And get the, you want to talk about how you want to see it out unfold? Please go ahead.
In the category of banking, insurance and stock exchanges, they have a great pole position if we take a different example from something else. Obviously they are already doing well. But let's find out how well are they doing next year when we are really doing the awards, because I want your feedback. This is just a small group who thought, how could this be done? And I need your feedback. I have the printout version of it. I can send the PDF so you can take it home, more or less. But the idea is that after we collect the feedback from different parts, that we then come to the conclusion, this is how it is robust. And then next year, we can't do this is 5 years. So next year we will show who are those banks who improved the most from 22 to 23. Who are the insurances being more committed in 23 than they were already in 22? And which are the stock exchanges? But you might have other ideas, and this is what we need to learn. Once we have that, we will integrate it in the approach. But as you can see, you can do 10 times other things. You know, you can only take those stocks from the DACH region, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, or only do an African award, or only do an energy award, whatever you want. You know, data are there, they are hopefully robust, and start dreaming about it. But finally, you have proper research. That's the idea.
Excellent. So, she wants one of these. By the way, this is available for those of you who can send people the report. You can email, if you leave us your email, you get it friendly to the environment. This is not friendly. And I'm gonna end up the meeting so we can go eat and drink. And thank you for spontaneous participation and volunteering due to our relationship. I appreciate you doing it, stepping up in a breakdown and a crisis, and allowing Roland to win instead of all of us, rolling it up and going back without his work being presented. So this is a round of applause, Roland, to you and your team. Serious players, deep thinkers. We will not have drinks and food. Let's go eat. Thank you very much.